I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself.
All right. My name is Cindy Heil. I'm the program manager for DEC's Air Quality Division for Air Non-Point Mobile Sources, which is a really long title that really doesn't mean a whole lot. I'm responsible for the development and implementation of the SIPs, State Implementation Plans, statewide. So Fairbanks is one of the plans that I'm responsible for, and that's who I am.
Well, welcome.
Well, thank you. So I'm just going to hop in here. So last Tuesday, the commissioner gave a presentation in front of the Chamber of Commerce. This is his presentation, but his contained a lot more information about other programs within DEC, and I'm just jumping straight into just the air quality portion. So if you saw his presentation last week, this slide that's up right now is slide 7, and there is, at the end of this is also some discussion on PFAS, which I won't going to go into. So I'm only going to talk today about the middle of that presentation and leave more room for questions, because I understand that the conversation went a little long, and so there wasn't a whole lot of opportunity for questions. So my goal is to have more room for questions. Just for time management, is this a half hour or an hour?
An hour.
An hour. All right. Okay, so this is just an example of a sign for an air quality advisory. This is obviously not in Fairbanks. So bear with us as I'm controlling the screen. It's just, there's a delay. There we go. So the Serious SIP, the Serious State Implementation Plan, this is what I'm going to be focusing on today. We're calling it a path forward, and I'm hoping to cover why we're here, what the status is, the changes that were made due to public comment, the summary of control measures and effective dates, the 5% amendment updates coming, and our current air quality efforts. So the first thing is, a little bit of background. Everybody's seen these slides. It's the really small particulates that we're talking about, the little 2.5 size, which is really smaller than a human hair. PM 2.5 comes from incomplete combustion. These are all the different sources. The reason we're all here is because PM 2.5 has significant public health risks, or can have significant public health risks, especially for our vulnerable population. And as if it's sustained and long-term, it can then begin to affect the non-susceptible portions of our population. So this kind of gives a recap of where we've been. So we were designated formally in 2009. Clean Air Act says that so this Clean Air Act is the overlying rules and structure, right? This is the act that Congress put in place. So it's not EPA per se, it's our guiding structure is the Clean Air Act. Clean Air Act says that if you have failed to get into attainment 10 years from the time that you were originally designated, that's a big deal. So December 2019 is our 10-year window. So this all started in 2009. The effort, we turned in the moderate SIP in 2014. In the spring of 2015, we started doing a serious SIP right away because our design value, because we were so far above the standard. So the standard is 35 micrograms per cubic meter. This serious SIP was based on a design value of 131, and so worst in the country at that point. And so we knew we were going to have a problem. So we started working on a serious SIP in the spring of 2015. Then in 2018, we released preliminary draft SIP documents. This was new. This was a new tact that most areas, I don't think anybody's ever done this before, but we decided to do this, felt it was really important that the community get to see a full picture of what the serious ramifications would be to meet those requirements. That triggered a local stakeholder group process for all of 2018, so which was really important. But it made it so that we couldn't meet our due date for the serious SIP. So we were late. We were late getting our serious SIP in, and then there was we were under court order to get it turned in. So the serious SIP was built, though, based on as many recommendations of the stakeholder group as we could put in, and still meet all the requirements in the Clean Air Act. So in 2019, we released the draft regulations SIP in May. We had the public comment period from May to July. We reviewed the public comments and finalized the series SIP between July and November. We adopted the regulations. It went through the final Department of Law review. Then it was filed by Lieutenant Governor, and we formally submitted it on Friday the 13th, December 13th. So we met our court order deadline of December 15th. Then what's happening is now in 2020, EPA has delivered a completeness finding. They did that on January 9th. They also met their court-appointed deadline. They had to do a completeness finding, and this is a big deal. That means we've met all the elements of the serious SIP. That does not necessarily means it's approvable. We hope it is, but EPA now has till January 9th, 2021 to issue a finding. I will be surprised if they actually issue a finding by that period of time, but they usually take a couple years to review a SIP, but I know that they're working really hard because they expect a court order to do a finding on that serious SIP, and that
so
they can...
Sorry, I was just going to say, so in simplified terms, it's the completeness finding is you had a quiz and you've answered all the questions that were on the quiz. Now it's more like the grading, actually going through and seeing whether or not you got the right answers. That's a long.
Yeah, we filled in all the answers. They had there was a form, and we filled out all the form. So they went through and said, okay, you filled all the form out. You met all the minimum requirements to get a SIP in. So we had all the elements are there. We've addressed everything, but whether we addressed it enough or not, that's going to be the issue. So a SIP right now on this slide, it says have 1 year to approve or disapprove. EPA actually has 4 categories. They can fully approve, they can fully disapprove, they can partially approve, or they can partially disapprove. Depending on what's approved or what's disapproved, could or will start a sanction clock whenever that finding happens. So, of course, we're pushing for full approval. We just got a notice of intent to sue today already, a 60-day notice. We think that they're going to have a really hard time with BACT. We've tried to lay out a really a good case for why we chose the BACT determinations we did, but out of the entire SIP, that's probably our most vulnerability. But we'll see, because our point sources are not the primary reason for our non-attainment. So that's kind of give a where we're at in the big picture with regard to the SIP. We'll be working over the next year while EPA is reviewing our SIP to answer other questions. So they'll read things and they'll say, how did you address this? And we'll say, oh, that's in this section of this appendix, because some of our appendices are several thousand pages long. So in order for them to go through that much material in this amount of time, we'll be working with them quite a bit to make sure they're pointed to the information, and so they can make informed decisions. So I think the SIP, I haven't counted up all the pages yet, but I think it's between 7,000 and 10,000 pages. all said and done between the main documents and all the appendices.
A nice little term paper. Are you at liberty to say who sued or on what?
We just got the letter today. I just got the email notice today. It was formally submitted to Andrew Wheeler. I will open it right now. Come on, open up. Let's see. It was Echo, like Echo Green.
Echo Green.
Echo Green, there you go. And it's on, Backed is one of them. I had a chance to read it last week, but it's not opening up. It's not being happy to open up right now.
It's okay. It's okay.
Oh, there it is. So it's Echo Green. They're saying that the document submitted does not on its own terms achieve statutory pollution compliance within 10 years, if ever. They're upset with the boundaries. They don't think we've met Backed. Those are the biggest: boundaries, timing, and Backed. They don't think we've met Backed.
Okay, well, I guess that brings up my personal, this is Jomo, my first big question, which, well, and I'm sure you'll be addressing it in this conversation, but the forward process. Again, this really what we're talking about is a plan to clean up the air and its expectation of being able to achieve its goal in a certain time frame. Is that correct?
So the serious SIP is meeting the requirements of when we got redesignated as a serious non-attainment area. Alaska got caught in an unfortunate chain of events. Usually, you're in a moderate for a while, then you get reclassed for serious, you have time to develop a serious SIP, you turn in your serious SIP, you have time to see if those control measures work. If they don't work, then you go to your next stages. Because of all the issues, and it's a complicated issue, our moderate SIP got turned in late. We got reclassified to serious, and the serious SIP was due right away, and we turned in a serious SIP on the, in the month that we're supposed to actually show attainment. So our timelines have been really compressed, and we just got caught in the unfortunate events of, the original designations were done under one part of the Clean Air Act. EPA was sued. They had to put us under a different part of the Clean Air Act. That means we had the moderate SIP almost done and then had to redo it because we were under a different set of requirements. Then after we turned the moderate SIP in, EPA finally promulgated the rules, the detail rules for PM 2.5, which meant they had to look at the moderate SIP under a different lens. And we had a whole gob of rigmarole to go through that. And then we had this serious SIP was based on the newer rules, and we had to put that in. So we're behind on the planning, on the documentation side. So we turn in a serious SIP, and that's why we're running already, getting ready to have to submit an amendment this spring.
I suppose it's
we're
nice
hoping,
to know that it isn't just us.
Yeah, no. There's Utah's in the same boat, and Southern California. We're all three in a tough situation right now, timing-wise. But we're meeting the requirements and getting things turned in, and then let everybody else. It's opinion and review of what we've done and interpretation of rules and whether we have we met the requirements or not. And that's going to be EPA and maybe in some cases courts. So when we went out to public comment, it ended at the end of July, and we had this new administration, and Commissioner Bruni was very much in wanting to make sure he understood what was going on. So we went out to public comment. DEC attended over 25 separate meetings to discuss the plan and answer questions when we on the day that we released it, we were doing dog and pony shows that week, and we talked to a lot of people, trying to make sure people would understand what was been released so they could have know where to focus on, and we could hopefully get really good comments back. We received and answered 82 questions. So every question that we got in writing or in the oral hearings, we summarized and posted answers prior to the close of the public comment period so people could have additional information to finalize their comments. And many commenters had multiple comments on a wide range of topics, which was good, and we received 117 individual comments via electronic comment forms, emails, in writing, or through oral testimonies. So 117. We posted all the comments. So that was something new that hasn't been done in the past, but we've posted all the comments, and you can find them on our webpage. And we have reposted a response summary to the comments. So EPA, we answered the comments directly to EPA. Most of all the other comments, we summarized them and grouped them in groups because there was a lot of common themes, and then answered those groups. Some of the point sources were commented on response to directly. So all those are also all posted. And what we have done is we make these pages. So this was the 2019, we called them the 2019 regs, the 2017, the 2014, and the 2013 also have all their response to comments, and we've kept all those questions, and we've kept all that information available so people can compare between us, and it's always on our websites. So you can see all that history. So as a result of all the comments, we try to make as many changes as we could within the boundaries of the federal requirements. So it's been a tightrope, for lack of a better description, to try to find a balance between what the community will tolerate and comments, really good comments that they had, and the federal requirements, because they're very strict. So you're trying to find this balance, and where there was enough factual information that we could throw at things to help make our case, our argument, for delaying or modifying, we try to put that in. So we used that and some of our write-ups as the reasons and the justification of why we made adjustments, and we're hoping that will still be acceptable to EPA. So one of the major ones was we originally proposed that diesel number 1 would start to be sold July 1st, 2020. Based on comments, we moved it out to 2022. The original comment was to go to 2024. We didn't think that that would fly. It was kind of hinted at us, with EPA, the questions they were asking. So we moved it from 2020 to 2022. Commercial wood sellers, we were flat out, absolutely no wet wood could be sold. We got comments about allowing 8-foot rounds, so we have made that exception. So there is an exception for 8-foot rounds to be sold if requirements are met. We had identified a difference between catalyst wood stoves and non-catalyst wood stoves. We were treating them differently. We got a lot of comments about people felt that was inappropriate. So we combined them, and we've treated them all the same. And additionally, we also were adding an additional requirement for non-cats for wood stove testing. And again, we had a lot of feedback on that particular requirement. We probably got a comment from almost every equipment manufacturer, wood stove manufacturer. So what we did was we provided an alternative option. So the requirement is still there; it applies to everybody, but there is a delay, alternative, and we delayed the start. So if anybody wants to go to that detail of what that all entails, I can go back to that, but right now I'll just kind of say that we took the comments, we provided an alternative, and we provided a delay start, and we treated everybody equally. And the alternative we provided them as a no-cost alternative and uses as existing data, so that there would be no new additional testing or requirements. The no-ash and stage 1 waivers are limited currently to just wood stoves with expanded requirements, and then we adopted no-ash and stage 1 AVER eligibility was expanded, so there's more types of devices that will be eligible for no-ash or stage 1 waivers, but they have to meet the expanded requirements. Have to be maintained. So right now, only EPA certified stoves, there are certain, like pretty much brand new ones can qualify. A little bit older stoves can qualify, but they have to meet all the requirements. So I'm not sure how many more no ash or stage 1 waivers we'll get, but we wanted, we heard people, so we tried to expand that ability. Coffee roasters were required to install a pollution control device unless information was provided. We established a threshold that would exempt small coffee roasters and make it much easier to determine their feasibility. And then the bag sources, we originally proposed a 0.2 sulfur limit on coal. We got information that they could meet a 0.25 usability, submitted documentation, so we changed it to 0.25 sulfur requirement. So those are the major ones.
That last one, looks like all of the preceding ones referred to smaller scale use or essentially home scale use. And the last one is the one directly related to utilities, utility scale.
Yes, yes. So just a summary again, the diesel requirement is September 2022, wood cell requirement is 2021, listed devices requirement, in order to be listed as a DEC device, you have to meet the certification requirements of a wood stove. These are for new wood stoves that's been delayed till September 1, 2020. There's multiple permit applications are due by the point sources. The majority of the applications are due June 9th, 2020. There's one that's allowed for June 9th, 2022. And then the permits need to be issued by June 2021. So that bullet right there is a requirement on DEC to issue all the permits by June 9th, 2021. So it's not just requirements on external to the department. DEC also has a requirement to meet. And then the backed implementation due dates are October 1, 2023. All the other requirements in the regulations were effective January 8th, 2020. So, except for those that have to have their, removal by 2024. So, what's happening now? So, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we failed to meet attainment 10 years after original designation, so December 2019. We were supposed to show attainment. We knew that we weren't going to meet attainment 2 years ago, because if you're going to meet attainment, meeting attainment means what you have to do is you have to take your three-year rolling average. And if you use 2019, 2018, and 2017, those 3 years, 2017 and 2018 were so high that even if 2019 had zero emissions, we still wouldn't have shown attainment by December of 2019. So we started negotiating with EPA, back in 2018, when we knew the 2018 final design value was high, that how are we going to handle this? And originally, we told everybody with the draft documents in 2018 that we were going to request an extension, a 5-year extension. Well, in the end of 2018, right before early 2019, EPA had a different interpretation and let us know that there was a different interpretation that another region was doing. This is Region 10, and they'd confirmed it, which said that we could turn in a SIP with a simple request to meet the requirements, but that if we didn't have a formal full request in and we acknowledged that we weren't going to attain, we could go to the next level, which is what's called a 5% reduction. And that would take most stringent measures off the table, especially to our point sources. So we have a most stringent measure in our attainment plan in the serious SIP. But if we would have requested an extension, we would have had to do most stringent measures on all categories, including the point sources, which would have meant the bar would have been that much higher to try to not have to do those really expensive sulfur controls. It would have been, we felt it was pretty much impossible for us to make the case under a most stringent measure requirement versus a best available control technology requirement. So right there at the very end, just before we were finalizing everything to get it out for public comment, we changed direction and decided that a 5% reduction per year was going to be less of a burden than trying to do most stringent measures. So we are required within 1 year to amend the serious SIP we just turned in. So before the end of December 2020, we're supposed to submit an amendment to the serious SIP that shows how we will meet 5% per year until we meet attainment. So we started working on that last fall, late fall. So our plan must show 5% emission reductions per year. The regulations that we submitted as part of the serious SIP is going to we get to take credit for those. So that's really cool, which is one of the reasons why we originally proposed some of the things a little earlier. But now that we're moving them out, we're going to hopefully, we haven't done all the modeling for this completely yet to find out how that staggering is going to work, or if we're still okay. As I mentioned, we still don't have to do most stringent measures. We get to update our design value and our base year. So that's huge, because the serious SIP's design value is 131. The 5% amendment, when we get to redo, we get to take advantage of the progress that the community has made. So I think we're going to run around 66, I think, instead of 131. So 66 is a lot better number. We get to use our existing regs that we already put into place that just went to effect, and we get to redo the base year. So we take right now we're gathering all the actual emissions that happened in 2019. That's going to be our new base year. And then we have to do 5% reduction from that base year going forward. So we don't have to have our 5% percentage is not as big as it would have been under the serious plan, this base year. So we're hoping for May of 2020, or if not in May, June-ish, May-June timeframe for releasing it out for public comment. And then we're supposed to submit it to EPA within December of 2020. So this is all Clean Air Act. Yes.
So, Cindy, Rick Soley, thanks. Can you kind of step up to sort of the comment on this from a hilltop? That is, you've got that one slide that has shown the years and the air quality levels. I'm wanting to understand design value and the 5% plan and the SIP kind of from that perspective. And I want to get a layperson's understanding of kind of what you call the design value of 66 versus 131.
So when you're doing a SIP, right? When you're doing a SIP, so there's a lot of things at play here, and it's complicated because the measurements that you see on the charts on the graphic showing are down. Those are actual monitored measurements, okay, and the design value. So then what you're trying to do is you're trying to model and project future, okay? So you have these models that are built based on actuals, and then you're trying to use those predictive things into the future. And you have to start at some place, okay? You have to have a fixed point in time in which you can then go, okay, we're gonna say from this point forward, this is what we're modeling and projecting how we think the implementation of our control measures are going to work. Then when you get to a point, then you look at your actual measurements and see if they correlate out into the future. So we can look backwards, but it's really hard when you're doing these plans because you have to look forward and take your best guess. So what I mean by design value is the Sirius SIP was developed with a design value. So it was a 5-year modeling design value. There's 5 years, average is 131. And from that 131, then we would apply our best estimates of how all these control measures would work and how much a reduction from starting at 131 and project out how far we think until we would show attainment, which was our
okay, so
guess
pause again.
is,
I want to, can you just, what is 131? Just,
131 is the modeling design value. It's 5-year average.
But how does that translate into air quality? I mean, I'm still wanting to understand this 35 parts per million, and what does that mean to the price of wheat in Russia?
So the 131 is based on actual monitored values, okay, over 5 years. You guys had monitored values of over 150.
Right.
Okay, you had really high numbers.
Yeah,
so, for example,
per million.
That's still a parts per million measurement, and
yes.
we could go to your website, and you've got the monitors, and it shows real-time data, and that is actually this is an average over that year. And so your modeling.
So it's what it starts out to is design value. It's not. They don't take the peak. They don't take the absolute peak. They take the second, what they call the 98th percentile, which is based on how many days a month that you got a value. So if you measure every day and you have legitimate QA/QC values every single day, then it takes the 8th highest value. That's the 98th percentile. And so you take the 8th highest value every year across 5 years, and you get an average. And that's your design value. That's your modeling design value for your SIP. So you have your 3-year average. That determines attainment or non-attainment. And then in a SIP, you use 4 to 5 year average because they're trying to take out the big highs and lows. And that's where your starting point is. So what it does is you're talking planning, tying back to the actuals. The monitored data is used to establish that number, and then you don't really think of it. Then you're not dealing with the actuals anymore, okay? Because you're projecting. So what happens? They took the 131. We took all the estimates of how much reductions each of those control measures would work, and we forecasted how long would it take to go from 131 to get below 35. And that's where that estimate of 29 to 2029 is, all right? So now with the amendments to the 5% plan, instead of starting at 131, we're going to start at 66 for best guess right now. 66, apply all of the control measures, our best guess on our control measures, and we're anticipating that it's not going to be 2029 that it's going to show attainment. We're thinking it's going to go we're going to come forward. And we're going to start
Yeah, if you
not
do the
on
math.
2023. We're going to start at 2019. So we're going to be able to realign the start points to better reflect what we've been seeing the last couple of years with the big reductions that we've seen. So now we should have, when this plan comes out this spring, a much better projection of when we think we're going to come into attainment. Does that make sense?
In a couple of sentences, if we do these things, you're saying that we should reach the model says that we should reach attainment by a certain date.
Correct.
Okay. And then,
if all the control measures work as we are hoping, and we meet all the estimates, we try to be conservative, in the estimates, and then you forecast out, and that's where you get your estimates. And we're expecting that it shouldn't be 2029. It should be shorter than that. I don't know if we'll get it by 2024, but I think it'll be closer to 2024 than 2029 is my guess. Like I said, we haven't done all the modeling yet. Because we just haven't gotten there yet. We have to start with actuals of 2019. So we'll take the actual numbers of 2019 with the design value, the new design value. Then we take pretty much all the control measures we already have in place now that's effective, and hopefully, if we can show a 5% reduction from our inventory, we may not necessarily need to have any new control measures. I don't know that yet. Every 3 years, we have to do what's called a qualitative milestone report and a reasonable further progress. And we have to show, are we meeting those targets? So in this 5%, in the serious SIP and this 5%, we show in the, there's a chapter within the plan that says, here's our target. So here's our reasonable further progress qualitative milestone targets. So our first report is going to be due to EPA March 2021. So we're in a sense, we're doing the 5% plan and we're starting to build the report. If we meet our qualitative milestones in 20, that we turn in for 2021, we're peachy keen. We don't have to turn in any contingency measures. If we fail to meet any reasonable further progress or qualitative milestone, we have to trigger contingency measures so that we have to turn on more control measures. If we don't, if we meet our things just fine, we don't have to turn on any more control measures. So the 5% plan will have to have more measures, and they've got to be more than what we're already doing, and we had to figure something out, but we may not necessarily have to turn them on unless we fail to meet a milestone. So that's going to be the biggest lift, I think, with the 5% plan, is trying to come up with new measures that we can hold ready. Now, to qualify as a contingency measure, all the regulations have to be put in place, and they have to trigger automatically. So if EPA issues any kind of certain findings, or you fail to meet a qualitative milestone report, the contingency measure will trigger automatically. So I'm hoping, no promises. Our current contingency measure that we have in the plan right now, the Series SIP, has a contingency measure. It is a requirement. So right now, all EPA uncertified wood stoves are supposed to be out by 2024, unless they're part of a real estate transaction, whichever sooner, right? That's the drop dead date of taking these out. Our contingency measure for the Series SIP is that devices older than 25 years, even if they're EPA certified devices over 25 years old, would need to come out by 2024 or at the time they turn 25 years. So it's a rolling 25 years. That is a contingency measure. The regs are already in place. It will be triggered on the finding of failure failure to attain. So we're expecting EPA to issue a finding of failure to attain the standard, the 2019 requirement, sometime this summer. And upon that effective date, that contingency measure will turn on. And at that point, if there's anybody who's selling the house that has a EPA certified device that's over 25 years from the date of manufacture, that device will need to be removed or replaced. So the new 5% plan's got to come up with even more contingency measures that we've got to figure out how to put the regs in place, but not trigger them unless we fail to meet a qualitative milestone. We fail to, if our plan is denied, disapproved, all these kind of things. They're all based on EPA findings and the EPA effective dates. To me, that's one of our biggest lifts moving forward. So that's the 5%. Rick, did I answer your question?
Yeah, mostly. I would love to see that chart that shows the air quality over years. It was kind of your chart that you used to show progress, but you probably don't have that in this presentation because that gives a sense of where we've been and where we're going. A couple more questions that I would have, but I think Mike Prox had a question.
Well, it's kind of along the same lines that Rick's going down. Where's the speedometer? How can the general public determine where we're at? From listening to what you're talking.
Yeah, well, you're talking to the so there's two things going on here, right? There's what's happening in the real world and what's these requirements, the planning requirements. And sometimes they don't necessarily go together very well. So the public will see that progress is being made with when alerts get called less and less and less. That's where it comes down to. That's where the rubber hits the road, is how many alerts or advisories or stage ones are getting called.
Can we say to our neighbors that, myself, for instance, I've let my garage go cold. Did that help?
No. Good point.
There's no way for me to know if I'm doing anything, if it really matters.
Or is there a way to know?
Is there a way to know that if you do something, it actually matters? Because right now, it's impossible to tell whether...
That's right. That's correct. I mean, that's correct. It is very difficult to tell individually because you're dealing with an airshed. You're dealing with monitors, you're dealing with curtailments, and so there's a balance here. This is where, from the state and federal levels, you have these big overarching requirements, but ultimately it's a community-driven change in behavior and how the community decides to, you guys already started. You guys started with the ESP project. We don't have the funding to put a monitor at every corner. You just can't.
Right.
Or would we want you to?
It's right. Well, that too. But the thing about it is that our hands are tied, to be perfectly blunt, on a lot of things. And so I can understand and believe me, can understand your frustration at a personal level that, who cares? What I do doesn't matter. Well, it does collectively. If you get enough people doing the right thing, you can go to conversations and talk about trying to change behavior on any topic. It doesn't even have to be air quality and how difficult it is on the collective. So,
but it is fair to say that
go ahead. Sorry.
If people, what do I want to say, reduce smoke day to day, it should result in fewer curtailments, or is that just modeled and you can reduce smoke?
No, it should. I mean, you asked me what you would see, and we're seeing the design value come down. Okay, that's an average over 3-year average, rolling average. So you see it from the big picture, but on your day-to-day, on your individual, you're not going to really see anything until you get to the point like, oh, it doesn't seem like we're getting as many alerts called this year, or not as many advisories this year.
Right. But
that's not going to necessarily help the pockets, okay? There are pockets that could be very, very difficult to get completely clean, even though your monitors may show it's okay. And we can monitor or model grid cells. The grid cells are, these squares, but if you're sitting right next to somebody who's a really bad smoker, there's, that's going to be really, really difficult to do much about it. You can't, we're not coming into everybody's houses. We're not going to do that. We can only apply regulations and efforts on a community-wide basis. And the thing is that the longer we fail to attain, the more requirements come in at a community level.
Yep. But it is fair to say to people that no, you're not going to see a change from DEC next week or next month, but in a year or two, you might.
Right. Well, the more devices that come out during real estate, the more we go out and say, okay, you guys need to take a look at your devices. Really, are they uncertified? Do you know they have to come out by 2024? Well, then you might want to really go check on the Targeted Airshed grant, the Wisdom Change Out program that's going in, and see what you can do about it. Really people have to start looking at their own devices and making some decisions. That's a start, and they really need to look at their wood supply. Where are they getting their wood? Are they cutting themselves? Are they allowing it to season? That's huge. That's really huge. Is there ability to do a conversion? Can you get into liquid, or those areas that have, as a community, those areas where you're starting to get natural gas penetration, how to help get those people converted. There's some big community things that, I can't come in and tell people you have to convert to natural gas. I can't do that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that helps a little bit.
Okay.
Not quite as,
so
I felt like we used to be able to see a bit more granularity.
Yeah.
What you're talking about. Cindy, we have friends up here, often come to these meetings, who are day traders. And of course, there's a whole system set up for you to be able to kind of watch on a moment-to-moment basis what's going on in the marketplace. And so you help make your decisions, or you've already made a decision and you can see how it's panning out. I thought that over at borough air quality for a while, we had the ability to have more granularity as far as
right. Well,
vision.
You guys chose, the community chose to remove this stuff from the borough. The borough has more tools. They had more flexibility than what we have as a state.
So it's just not being maintained that way anymore at this moment.
We're not doing we like the drive around the sniffer cars and all that kind of stuff. No, we don't have the ability to do that.
But you do still have the monitors, and you can go on the DEC website and see the real-time data. We could go on there right now and you could pull it up.
That's right there, absolutely. Yes.
And that's what you're at.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's still there. What you don't have is, you can see what's happening at the monitors, and at the little monitors at the schools, right, that are up. But you're not going to tell what's in your what Mike having his garage go cold. What does that affect? We have no clue.
Yep. Cindy, we have another question. Clark?
Yeah. Hi, Cindy, and thanks so much.
Hello.
First again, howdy. I was wondering how long it'll take to get an actual for 2019 for our monitoring this year to have a new data point. I'm hopeful that that'll be some improvement to tend to continue pointing out that we are improving and we need to keep on it and we need to have people join Mike and others in change outs, et cetera.
Right.
It'd probably take a couple months to finalize all
Yeah,
the data. I know it doesn't take
yes.
October, but
Yes, that's why I'm laying out a guess for you. The monitoring data are certified to EPA on May 1st. We are going to get preliminary stuff, and remember, you know, the design value will fluctuate a little bit based kind of on weather and whatnot. So there's going to be some up and down. What you don't want to see is a great big jump from, you know, up in the 70s or 80s or 90s again. If we're in the 60s, that's great. We might vary, you know, from 62 to 67 or something, and then hopefully we'll take another drop. What everybody needs to remember is the closer we get to the standard, the harder it is. You know, it takes. I mean, we started with the moderate SIP, which is the downtown monitor at 44, and we've done 10 years, and we've gotten down into the upper 30s. You know, we're really close, 34, 35, 36. So to get that 10 micrograms, it was really difficult. We've had to put all these new control measures in. Hopefully we've put enough in, and we get enough of the, you know, changeover of devices and really educating people and getting people interested and anything that new that comes out that we'll get those additional reductions, but it's not going to be easy.
And it will improve the sustained reduction.
Yeah.
And we have to, right, because what the difficulty is, what you guys have to remember is we got to get into attainment, and then once we get attainment into we meet the standard, then we have to apply for a maintenance area, and we have to show we can maintain it for 20 years. So this is a long haul. This is I mean, and you just see how it is with the carbon monoxide area. You know, they're now starting a second 10-year. I think 2023, I think, or 2022, you'll have met it, and then you'll get it formally designated as attainment area, and conformity goes away, but you know, all your control measures, you know, your tendency measures all have to stay in place, because in case anything happens, you got to put them back in. So it's.
We have a question here, Ms. Heil. Beth?
Yeah, one thing I'm kind of curious about with the colder winter that we're having this year, I'm curious what the monitoring results have been so far, as far as, you know.
I'm not in the monitoring program, so I haven't had a chance to really look. But yeah, cold weather. You can have episodes of cold weather. I think one of your cold weathers had clouds and ice fog, and the numbers weren't as high. But other times you do, and numbers do get high. I would have to go and look at the latest data, and I haven't done that. But I can get something to Jomo if you would like me to.
Thank you.
Okay, well, Ms. Heil, it looks like we're about 5 minutes till 9.
Okay, well, let me.
I
think there's just a couple more slides. Yeah, I think this is like one or two more slides. So, what our current efforts are, you know, big kudo to GVA for these ESPs, and DEC has found a little bit of money, not very much, but we're going to collaborate and build off of the Fairbanks ESP testing that's currently happening right now. So they're currently testing ESPs on a pellet, and then once they finish their pellet testing, they're going to go back to the assembly and whether or not they can continue on other devices. Well, DEC is going to have money, and we're not going to go to the extent that the Fairbanks is doing on the pellet. We're just going to see if we can't find some boundaries. We're going to put the ESP on a non-cat stove and run a couple test runs on it. So we're not going to go get the 6 replicates because we're not trying to do emission factors. We're just trying to see how it works to help inform the 5% plan and inform the borough on their next steps. So we're hoping that that will happen in February. So that's something we are working on. That I'm really happy to be able to say that we are doing that. So we are applying for another targeted airshed grant. Just to let you know, this targeted airshed grant we still qualify for again. Targeted airshed grants are tricky in the sense that once you qualify to apply, once you apply, you're then competing head-to-head to all the other areas and all the other communities. So it's really, really important that we develop an application that will give us a fighting chance. It's mostly based on the points you get are based on how much actual emission reductions you can show. So we've been very competitive the last 2 years by doing a wood to liquid conversions. This application, we are again trying to do some liquid, wood to liquid to get us some good reductions, but we're also looking at a smaller wood to wood conversion option. And we are looking at adding a component called a no ash reduction project, which is trying to get money that's kind of wide open that would allow us to go into to approach people who have been on a no ash, no other source of heat. So they're burning continuously, and the reason they need a no ash is they have a malfunction or defective alternative heating device, and go in there and do it whatever it takes to get them so they can heat with something else besides wood. So we're hoping that will help with points on the environmental justice standpoint. We're going to try to get at least one sign, and we're going to put in for additional compliance. So it's a more rounded type of an application to try to hit on all the themes that we hear a lot about areas that have like gaps or holes in the previous change out programs, trying to help with, getting the message out, trying to help with compliance, trying to help with getting people off the no ash, and a little bit of wood to wood, but it's still at the same time also the meat of it we're hoping will give us the most emission reductions is to help with the transition to natural gas. So that's due in a month, so we're finalizing that, and then it'll be out of my shop and it'll be into the administrative pieces that have to be bells and whistles to meet the granting requirements. And then our compliance activities that have been going on to date is we're trying to encourage compliant behavior. We're continuing every time we call us an alert. We have staff out in the community for observations. We are non-complaint observations and complaints. But the non-complaints are 3-letter advisories. They are issuing the letters, and we're hoping the business neighbor to neighbor is preferable to us coming in as big brother. And then that's the last slide. So any other questions in the last few minutes that we have?
Questions?
My one question regarded on the slide where you talked about a no distinction between certain appliances and kind of what that meant.
Okay,
what the complaint had been and how it got resolved.
So it all comes back to what's our main goal. Okay, main goal, get air quality, but it is to continue to allow wood burning, all right? Burning wood in the community is important, it's needed, it's economically desired, all this stuff. What's difficult is on the West Coast, a lot of communities have, in their best available control measure requirements, have either relied completely on curtailments or are banning outright any new solid fuel fire device installation. So those two items, we didn't, even though it's technically and economically feasible to do them, are just not realistic. We're trying to make that argument realistic. So what we've been trying to do, instead of aligning ourselves more to the West Coast model for median attainment, we expanded our horizons and have found that the northeastern states are very similar to us in the sense that they want to burn wood too. So their reasoning is a little different from ours. We're more economic driven. They're more greenhouse gas, renewable fuel driven. But the end goal is to continue to burn wood. To that effort, the NYSERDA, and what's called NESCOM, these conglomerates of northeastern states, have put about $7 million worth of stove testing in to develop new methods and new information. I've had the privilege of being able to get some of the preliminary data, and you can really see that catalytic devices and pellet devices have a lot less emissions than non-catalyst devices. And so we proposed, based on that information, to treat non-catalyst and catalyst devices separately and put more requirements on the non-catalyst devices. Well, people did not want us to do that. They wanted everybody to be the same. They wanted us to look at a different standard, looking at the BTUs. We can't do that. We put that in the answers. But so we're putting them all together. We're still going to require them to either show their emissions through what's called a continuous emissions monitor, and they're testing what's called a TEOM. That's a very new technology. The equipment manufacturer said it was unfair. We weren't specific enough. It could cost them more money. So we said, okay, you're absolutely right. That's fair. So we provide an alternative. So what's happening right now when a stove is certified by EPA, it's an average of an average. So they take the average amount of emissions over the average length of the time of the test, and you get these really small numbers. Well, when the new NSPS came out, the new requirements for testing came out in 2015, EPA wanted to gather more data. So they said 1 hour into the test for each run that you do, you have to take a filter sample 1 hour in. So we went and pulled 60-some certification tests from all these different stoves, pellets, cats, non-cats, didn't look at what type of devices, what the make and model was, just looked at the data, and determined that if we set a 1 hour filter maximum that you could have at any valid run, that would help reduce the number of stoves that were not performing properly, we felt were properly, that the test method was too long, and and certain makes and models were taking advantage of that. For example, some of the 1 hour filter pulls of devices are 15 grams per hour to 50 grams per hour. So for over an hour, what we don't know, you don't know if that's the peak or how long that peak is happening. So, but it is an indication that's saying, hey, these stoves are putting out a lot of particulate in 1 hour of the test. So we set a limit. What it did was it dropped the list from 60 EP certified by 13. So it just affected about 13 models in our sample. So it still leaves a broad number of options for devices to be DEC listed, but it is dropping out those devices that don't appear to be operating. Their performance has all this extra emissions that we just can't deal with right now. We have seen TEOM data that shows that these peaks that we're seeing in the 1 hours are not peaks. They're actually, they could be on the upswing of the peaks, and that the peaks can last an hour to an hour and a half, not just a single one shot in time, but a long period of time. So we've now submitted this to EPA. I was in North Carolina last week, putting our statement forward that we're very concerned with the testing methods that are currently happening, and that there's devices that are being certified that under the TM test is showing up to a 300 grams an hour rates for 2 hours versus what they're being sold at a 2 gram per hour emission standard. So it's really scary from that perspective. So we want to make sure that we get the cleanest, best performing devices into the area if we're going to continue to burn, and that these other devices that are taking advantage, what we feel of a type of an alternative test method, are not allowed into the area. And the thing is that under best available control measures, we're either supposed to not allow any solid fuel fire devices, or we're supposed to have pellet only. Since 1994, Missoula, Montana has only allowed pellet devices to be installed. So we're trying to make the argument that our approach was more realistic, more real world, not an average of a test, and that we did find 1 hour filter pulls on devices that were above our standard that still met the 1.0 gram per hour pellet stove. So we think our approach is more robust, and we're hoping that that will pass the BACM test when EPA reviews it. But in reality, we were supposed to go, if you were to look at BACM purely, we would have done a pellet only, or no new solid fuel devices. So we knew we had to do something outside the box but still at the same time try to provide the ability for people in the Fairbanks North Pole area to still be able to purchase new solid fuel devices and have more choices than just pellet. So that's a long story.
Thank you. That is a long story, but it's a good story. Cindy, thank you for the presentation today. Thank you for your efforts and the efforts of the commissioner. We appreciate your support and help in this area. We appreciate your work, and as things progress, we hope you'll come back and talk to us again.
Anytime. We, especially if I can do it remotely and electronically, anytime you guys want to chat, let us know.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Cindy. Have a great day.
Bye-bye. Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, Miss. For everybody else, just so you know, we will not be having a meeting next week. Just giving you a heads up, unless you want me to, because I won't be here.
Okay.
Okay.
No, that's fine. Rick can handle it.
Because I like making you dance, boss. But it was my plan not to have a meeting. I have to go out of town for some professional training, so you'll get a week off. But thereafter, we do have something lined up.
Well, Mr. Jumbo, we're all happy you're going to get professional training. So.
I bet you are, sir. I wonder, I think it might be the port. The Port of Anchorage will be coming up, though. I have reached out to Jim Jager. I know that that's going to be big part of the discussion down in Juneau this spring. Okay?
Did the ranked choice voting people present?
Not yet. They ranked choice voting just let me know that they want to nail down for the 1st of March.
March, okay.
Well, what is the? Oh, that doesn't say the 1st. It just says March 14th.
Well, I had it as tentative. I'm getting there, sir. But they did,
cool.
yeah.
Okay, good.
We're obviously looking at your internal documents here.
Yeah. These are actually the best files I maintain. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Can we get a copy of that, Joe?
Pardon?
Can we get a copy of that?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.